Okay, good morning, everyone. Well, this is lecture number 7, the one I promised you, which I will put on YouTube or online lecture because we were not able to discuss this one because of the fact that I was suffering from a bum shoulder or an injured shoulder cuff injury. So, as promised, this will be lecture number 7, and I will share this with you. But this is a different lecture than the one that we will take up during your lecture week this week. This is for the last time that we have not discussed lecture number 7. I hope that is very clear and I hope you understand this. So let us start with our lecture in logic and critical thinking. We are now in lecture number 7 and we will be tackling logical fallacies. Okay, so let us first proceed with our quotation to start with. Okay, it says, the fallacy of fools isn't their ignorance, it's their confidence in their erroneous belief from the gluttonous reader. Well, if you come to think of it, every person in this world have ignorance. In fact, not a single person came out of their mother's womb knowing everything, if you come to think of it, dear students. However, the confidence of pretension that you know what you do not know is actually the greatest error in life. Because if we are really sensible people, we will not say we know if we do not know. So that is why confidence in their error or the erroneous belief is something that an illogical person will always do. Now, continuing with our discussion, our biblical text now is found in Proverbs 18 verse 2. Fools find no pleasure in understanding, but delight in airing their opinion. Okay. I hope not one of us here, not any of us here would like to be called a fool. So listen to others' opinion, as the Bible says. Now, for our first subtopic, fallacies and what do we mean by this? Okay. Now, uh, a fallacy is defined as an argumentation that seems to be correct in grammatical arrangement, but somewhere along the presentation, an error is being spotted, and oftentimes these are called the invisible errors of listening, of reasoning. Now, remember, dear students, fallacies are very, very misleading errors. Sometimes they're incorrect grammar, incorrect prepositioning, incorrect presentation. But somewhere along the way, there are thought errors that are being placed there, maybe not deliberately, but in some aspects, some people are really deliberately trying to fool other people with fallacies. You know what? They call it fallacies are error of intellectual people because only intellectual people can also know how to make a fallacy. And at the course of our discussion today, only intellectual people on also can decode fallacy. So it takes training to make training to be able to divert and make fallacy, and it also takes a lot of training to decode the fallacy. So safe to say, fallacies are really the game of people who are gifted with intellectual minds. Now, don't get me wrong, fallacy is still considered wrong. That's why it came from the root word false or fallacy. Now, another definition would have it this way. This is a reasoning that is logically invalid or that undermines the logical validity of an argument. Often it is communicatively correct but logically wrong or misleading. However, it takes a brilliant mind to uncover or discover fallacies. Now, I already took this up with you earlier. Okay? If intellectual people want to mislead others, they do it intellectually. That's why when intellectual people wanted to do monkey business or do things that are not okay, that are not right, most of the time they become successful because they put their intellect into the wrong practice and they can create fallacies which cannot be, what do you call this, which cannot be very obvious. Okay, but still there is fallacy and you need a lot of knowledge to uncover, discover, or even just identify this one. So this morning we are very glad that we can take up fallacy, one of the more complicated lecture materials in the subject logic. Now, why do people resort to fallacies? Now, ask yourself, if there can be truth, or if truth can set us free, why will some people resort to fallacies? Now, let us try to discover. Number one, they want to consciously mislead a correct point. Sometimes we have our personal agenda that, example, we know the answer. We don't want our seatmate to know the answer. We don't want the other people to know the truth because it will be a competition to us. Well, they will consciously mislead a correct point. Oftentimes, a little twist on what is the real right will make things favorable for us. Favorable for us, okay? That is why we result into misleading points to cater to our own correctness. So this is very applicable to some students whom they think that their friends are actually the real competition. Now, when there are times that their friends want to inquire something, they will not provide everything. They will miss out something so that when the actual counting of scores will begin, they will have a better advantage or an identifiable advantage over the person that they thought that they have shared their knowledge with. So they want to consciously mislead a correct one. That is one purpose why some people, intellectual ones, really results into fallacies. Now, another reason, they want to defend a wrong to make it look right and avoid humiliation. There are some people, even identifying that their stand is already wrong, they will say, hayain na, I would rather be wrong and stand for my principles than to be right and break my principles. Now, it looks like that bravado feeling, that kind of arrogant feeling, is very correct when you're facing your friends. But in reality, knowing what is wrong and still doing what is wrong is in itself wrong. If you are doing what is wrong and you know that it is not right, it's time for you to actually do the right. Okay? Sometimes it is easier to do wrong and be seen as right than to do right and correct the wrong. We often connote acceptance of error as a sign of weakness. Now, dear students, let me tell you, the strongest persons in this world, the more successful people in this world were those persons who are very, very prompt and very, very quick to admit their errors. Because once you admit the error in a very, very small beginning yet, it's easier to correct it than when it becomes a full-blown error that you will only solve it percentages by percentages and you cannot really solve it most likely in terms of 100% solution. That's why it's better to you have better prognosis to solve errors when it is still early. Next, what other reasons? They want to create a declaration to prove things without factual foundation. You know what? Sometimes, especially doing research, we invent our own proof, we invent our own ideas, we invent our own resources. Okay? And most likely, intellectual people who are lazy will do this. Intelligence used to deter people from what is right. Okay? Mainly because we have no evidence that that is right and we created our own counterfeit personal evidence to prove that point right without any labor is worse than physically abusing people. This will forever register in their minds and that wrong will continue. Imagine if you will teach your classmates something wrong in the practice of nursing, they will carry that with them even if they will become professionals someday. Would you like to be remembered the person who influenced another person in doing wrong? That's why in the near future, that person you thought followed everything religiously that you have taught, but they did not know that it's wrong, or it's hard for them to believe that they are wrong because they trusted you as a friend. There goes the error of fallacy because of laziness to find the facts or the evidences. Okay, one more thing. Fallacies can only be done by people who have great mental capacity. I mentioned this to you already earlier. Fallacies are intellectual way of misleading or misguiding people. That's why it also takes intellectual people to decode fallacies or to identify fallacies. That is why intelligence used incorrectly is very dangerous, dear students. Remember that. Remember, a wise teacher using fallacies will create more distorted geniuses. All I want to say is, example, in our work as teachers, if we will not study our lessons or if we will not prepare for our lessons, how many nursing students in the near future will commit an error because we are not prepared and we did not teach correctly, rightly, more evidently the lessons we are supposed to teach. This is the very reason why fallacies is why fallacies are also very important in the study of nursing. Why? Because assuming that we teach correct is never enough. It should be factually correct, dear students. Now, okay, let us now take up some of these fallacies that are actually proliferating in our community, in our system. So we will have some fallacies. This will be broken down into two lectures. Okay, the first is fallacy of insufficient evidence, and the second is fallacy of people, which will be lectured in chapter 8, which we will tackle this coming Tuesday in our class. Okay, so for the moment, let us have fallacy of insufficient evidence. Okay, now the first fallacy is appeal to popularity. Another term for this is argumentum ad populum, or the bandwagon fallacy. Now it goes this way, assuming that a conclusion is proven because people in general believe it to be true. Okay? So the word now is assumption. That's why I always tell you this, dear students, if we assume only hand washing, if we assume only praying, if we assume only putting the drapes on our patient in our related learning experience or in our practical laboratories, in our RLEs, time will come, this will become a fallacy. Because we assume knowing when we do the actual thing, we do not know already. Okay? So for example, President Estrada is the best president of the Republic of the Philippines due to the fact that he received the country's highest vote for presidency since there was a presidency in the Philippines. If you come to think of it, President Estrada won the presidency not because of his accomplishments, not because of his track record, not because he is really good, not because he is a graduate of great professions that can really rule the country. He became the president because of his roles in televisions and movies, and because he is a movie actor. Okay? So you cannot connote the number of votes he get into the kind of person that we could have elected being a well-experienced and a person with great factual knowledge in governance. I hope you get my point. This is also very much related into popularity contests. That's why sometimes what is popular is most likely not also correct. Because popularity is not at any chance a proof of correctness. Now, let us point the fallacy here. It should not take an expert to interpret how the Philippines logged during his presidency or during Estrada's presidency. That means the votes are not the indicator of his performance. Now, during the Estrada administration, Philippines went down deeper into the economic failures. He was even impeached. If he is the best president, then why was he impeached? So, popularity has nothing to do with the success of a certain person. Okay? The fallacy here is not because many people like you, not because many people believe what you're doing, not because many people praise you, you are already a good person. It will still take a track record, a factual proof of your accomplishment and an experience of being a person who knows how to do what is right. That makes one, okay? That makes one a better person. Now, let us narrow down into an example in the nursing profession. So here, classroom election for officers in the class or even in the organization of the School of Nurses Association. Now remember, okay? Remember their students. Classroom election is always being voted because of popularity and because of maturity. Remember, not all people who win the election are capable and qualified people. Often those who win are the popular ones, the closest to the clinical instructors, as well as those that have popularity on their end. That is why with the wrong officers, the organization suffers. Do you agree with me? Okay? Even if you are intelligent, if you do not have a lot of friends, you will not win classroom elections. Okay? But it will take a lot of minds, a lot of experiences, a lot of track record to lead a class, to lead an organization into success. Now, you don't have that if you only won because of popularity. Okay? So, as an officer, it would be right for you to decline the nomination if you know that there is someone better than you to take that position and lead the class to a better place. That's why popularity is not enough to make the nursing organization become a successful one. It is the proof that one person has is experienced enough, has experience of defending the organization, and has the capacity to really lead the organization in the right place. So this is appeal to popularity. This is our first fallacy for this lecture. Again, another term for this is argumentum ad populum or the bandwagon fallacy. So stop using appeal to popularity. Okay? Because popularity is not a sign of intelligence, knowledge, or wisdom. It is a sign that we may have none of those. Okay, let's go to the second fallacy, appeal to tradition. Now, another name for appeal to tradition is trending fallacy. Okay, so many of us are really dependent now or what is trending in Twitter or in X. Okay, the new name of Twitter now is X. What is trending on Facebook? What is trending on Instagram? Okay, what is trending in the music, in the radio stations? Okay, now we then connect the tradition or the trend as the better ones. Okay, look at the music that we have now in our radio and television. Those music with message, with good storytelling, with good harmony, they don't usually place on top of the chart. But those music that are not even having a message or just beat, just, you know what, rhythm, they place very high on the music chart list. Why? Because people believe that whatever is the trend is always right. Remember, what is right is what you have proven to be right. It's not the trend that people gave, because the trend might be wrong. It might only be popular. Okay. For example, there is nothing wrong with non-frequent cheating. It's done by everyone, especially in our course with human capacities not enough to pass. Well, if you come to think of it, if you will be telling this to your classmate, hindi naman ganun. It's not that wrong to cheat. It's better to cheat than to repeat. Okay? Well, not all of us will say that really our teachers are giving us a hard time. 10 chapters, 15 chapters, it's really a hard time. So in survival, it's not wrong to cheat. Surviving is a way of trying to tell everyone that we can do something even if we are not that good. Now, come to think of this, dear students. Cheating is cheating and it is wrong. Okay? No valid evidences can lead cheating to be right. Okay? So if there are already reasonings that may convince you to cheat because the society is wrong, the system is erroneous, you are still wrong. Okay? Giving a wrong solution to a wrong system does not make it right. Okay? Giving a correct solution to a wrong system makes the system think otherwise, or it will disturb their conscience. That should have been the thing that you have done. Now, let's always remember, cheating in itself is already wrong. Justifying it does not make it correct. It is still wrong. So let us be aware of this, dear students. So the next time your classmate will say, we have 10 chapters. There are 3 of us. You study chapters 1 to 3. I study 4 to 6. You study 7 to 10. And then we will share each other's answer, because this is the only way we can survive anyway. There is injustice in the department giving so long an exam. Remember, dear student, a wrong does not solve a wrong. It is still wrong. Okay? Let us see if we can have more examples for the nursing department. Let us see this one. Situational example related to the practice and learning of science of nursing. Situation. Okay. Students are just borrowing CHN bug contents from one section to another when checking comes. Anyway, it's culture already. So I hope you are not practicing this one, but many of the nursing students in section A will have a complete bug, and when the section B will be the one on duty and the section A on theory, section A will what? Will lend some of the instruments to the bug of section B students. And then section B, when they will be checked with their CHN bug, seem to have a complete bug and get a very high score. Get a complete score. Now that is in itself dishonesty. It might be the trend in your checking of the RLE bug that you're borrowing things. But what will happen if you will be together, if section A and section B will be checked together, then there goes the possible erroneous effect of this. Remember, dear students, everything that is being done dishonestly will also end up with a very, very hard lesson of dishonesty. Now, let me point something with this fallacy. Remember, getting away with a crime as what the majority can do when not caught does not make the crime right. It just makes the crime more complex because as time goes by, people will rather do more innovative approach to normalize the crime than call crime by its right name and penalty. So come to think of this, if we will succeed by evading or doing things that are irregular and just struggle not to be caught, it is not actually solving the problem. It is just evading the problem that may even face you again in the future. Okay? If we really want to solve the problem, even how hard, let us face the problem. Okay? Search for some solutions, ask help when needed, and this is the best way to always completely solve the problem. So remember always, trending fallacy or appeal to tradition is not logical because not everything in the trend is right. Most of them are only popular. Most of them are only liked by many because of their appeal. But the correctness is always one that we need to prove, we need to get evidence, we need to feel, we need to experience. And by then we can say that something is really correct in terms of application. This is appeal to tradition and trending fallacy. Now let us go to the third one. I hope you understand that one, dear students. Okay? Not because that is the praise of the town, for example, in ladies. Okay, so today, the trend is to let your navel or your pusod be shown in public with the shortness of the dress on top. Okay? But you know, your navel was not created to be shown to the public. Okay? Sometimes I can even see students, their navel shown to the public. It's dirty. Okay? It's black. So not because this is the trend, we can always say that this is what we want to do. Apply logic, apply common sense before following the trend, dear students. Now, let us go to the third one. Inappropriate authority. Argumentum ad verecundiam is another, what do you call this? Another term for this. How does this happen? Well, we persuade others by appealing to people. Okay, again, argumentum ad verecundiam. Now, persuading others by appealing to people who command respect but never an authority in the matter at hand, this authority is not in the proper place as exercised. I can remember this example before when the Department of Health are distributing condoms to high school and elementary students. That was a very funny, no, very funny move by our Department of Education to give condoms. But you check the news, there was a time when they give when they are giving condoms to students. Now, there was an outcry of the Catholic Church. Remember, this is only for example, no hurt meant to our Catholic friends who are listening with us. Now, the Catholic Church, to their priests, encourage students not to use this one and tell them this is not good. If you come to think of it, the priests are not also considered experts in the usage of condom because in the first place, they're not psychologists. They are not medical doctors. They're not even occupied therapists. So their expertise is the Bible. So telling people not to use condom is not really a place where they are authorities. The place could have invited a psychologist and let her lecture in church about the evil of letting elementary and high school students use condom because psychologists have authority. Okay? So Catholic priests saying that condom use is not good is actually part of their ministry, but not part of their expertise. So it's just like trying to say, do you want to get a drug prescription from an engineer? Okay. Do you want a medical doctor to build your house? Okay. Do you want a lawyer to do your electrical wirings? So when you want authority to be followed in the right place and in the right time, we should also let the real authority teach this one. Well, in some systems, even in our school, it is very obvious that some teachers are not majoring. Okay, some teachers are not majoring in the subjects that they're teaching. They're just teaching there because no more other teachers can teach the subject. So it's very sad that even in our system, there are appeal to inappropriate authority. The word inappropriate means incorrect. Okay, that's why the point that we are driving here is the Catholic Church is a religious organization, and it is not a medical or psychological foundation that can be an authority in the use of. So again, no offense meant to the Catholic Church. This is only as part of the example because if the Adventist pastor also gives what? Gives a command not to use condom because it is not good, the pastor is also inappropriate in authority. We need to invite a doctor or a psychologist to give this so that their study, their education for 4 to 10 years will be their authority in terms of telling what should be and what should not be done with condoms. I hope this is clear. So even if you have knowledge, if you do not have the authority, it becomes an inappropriate authority. Now, say for instance this one. Okay, a clinical instructor commented that the bus used to transport nursing students is not safe and on the high roadworthiness. Now, question is your nursing instructor a mechanical engineer or a mechanic? So saying such things, declaring the bus is incapacitated, is an inappropriate authority because the nurse is never a mechanical engineer, even if they know something about cars, a little bit of it. Okay? I hope you understand this one. That's why spare your public comments, spare your public declarations if you are not an authority because even how correct you are telling something, if you do not have the study, the education, the knowledge, the learning of this, you will still be considered an inappropriate authority. Okay. Proceeding now to the next, the fallacy of accidents. Now, fallacy of accidents is also called circumstantial fallacies. Applying a general rule to a particular case when there is an obvious circumstance that exempts such situation, generalizing even the exempted in the essence here. Now, for example, all students are expected to go to Murcia for a municipal program. That means the school cannot stop John from attending even if he has an existing campus-bound status. Now, so John went out. He was penalized by the school. The truth of the matter is, John should have been exempted because of a punishment given to him. So, fallacy of accidents or circumstantial fallacies are also called an exemption to the rule. If we do not apply exemptions to the rule because we made the rule so strict, even if it is illogical already, even if there's a correct reason not to follow it, then it becomes a fallacy of accidents or circumstantial fallacies. Now, let us go to nursing. All nursing students should be in their duty during the RLU week schedule. That means everyone should be in the clinical area whatever the circumstances are. Wow. No? But you cannot invoke this kind of reasoning if you know that you were absent from the pre-con, you do not have a complete requirement, you do not have a patient data, you were not able to perform things needed from you into the pre-duty session, you will always know that you will not be allowed to be in the clinical area. So, trying to invoke that everyone should be there, okay, and trying to hide the exemptions that you actually are not qualified to be there is a fallacy of accidents. Remember, when the law states that everyone should be, okay, that is only for everyone who has followed the rules, who has normal capacity to be there. But if you are in a circumstance wherein you did something wrong, there is something that is worth the reason for you to be absent, you can still have an exemption to the rule. So fallacy of accidents are rules that is applied to people who have good reasons not to follow the rules. Okay? So I hope you understand this fallacy. Next, We have the fallacy of hasty generalization. This kind of fallacy is very common with college students. What do you call this? Okay. Being judgmental. That's the correct term. Being judgmental. Another term for this is converse accident fallacy or opposite to accident fallacy. So being judgmental, you don't have complete evidence, but you still say that you are already sure. This is giving or drawing universal or general conclusions from insufficient evidences or inadequate proofs regarding the matter that occurred. Example here, all CPAC students I met at the church, when I have the chance to visit, speak English very well. Therefore, all CPAC students are good English speakers. Now, that person only met 5 students. And those 5 students are actually very good in English. Now, how can you conclude that 5 students is a good representation of the 1,700 students of this college? That is a hasty generalization because you don't even reach 1/8 or 1/4 of the population that you ask. You don't even have it at random testing and you control it only in one place. Therefore, saying a generalization without complete samples or without good samples is actually hasty generalization or judgmental generalizations. Okay? Now, in nursing, let us try to see this. I experienced getting very low and illogical grades from 3 of my clinical teachers or clinical instructors. That's why I can say all CIs are really anemic grade givers. Wow. This is only for example. This has nothing to do, I have a disclaimer, this has nothing to do with any school or any system. So example, you have been under 3 CIs and they all give a minimum grade of B- and C+. Then you conclude that all the CIs, the entire department has a phalanx of CIs who gives very low grades. Now, remember, 3 out of 15 clinical instructors in a certain university is not a majority or not even half. That means generalizing that every CI is like that without even meeting half the total number can be considered an irresponsible conclusion or one that is basically what? Basically non-research and non-logical in orientation. Okay? So hasty generalization just want you to have more evidences, more proofs, at least 50% of the actual population reach so that or you can use research samples. A good sample of a large population where you compute for N, okay, if you still remember this one, that will be a great way to come up with generalizations which cannot be considered hasty or judgmental or very fast without evidences. That is hasty generalization. Now, we have another one here. Fallacy of divisions. Another term for this is part-whole fallacy. These are wrong assumptions that what is true in general is also true in particular, assuming that there is no human peculiarity in a common group that everyone acts similar. Now, example, in Davao, in Mindanao before, there was a swine flu. Okay? Now, the local government of these certain towns ordered all the swine or all the pigs to be terminated. If you come to think of it, people in those places are only thriving through pig racing, hog racing. Now, it is the duty of the government to teach to test each pig before killing them so that swine flu will not really proliferate. But because of laziness, sometimes not wanting to do the rigorous or the fatigue-based functions of their job, finding one pig with what do you call this? With swine flu, okay, one among the 500 with swine flu, then they will all kill the 500. This is part-whole fallacy. One part does not determine the characteristic of the whole. Okay? So, not because the majority of the group display one common similarity that every group member should be with accuracy and finality be considered in the same common ground. The testing is done to know the effects it has, it affected or not affected. So remember that always. Not because the group thinks this way. A person will already conclude that everyone thinks this way. An individual should be treated individually, even if an individual is within the group. Now, here is another example. All teachers in CPAC are expected and observed to be strict and merciless with deadlines. That is why Sir Noy, being a nurse teacher, is of the same expectation. Wow. Sinali niyo pa ako, ah. You all know that my deadlines are not dead. When you say, sir, can I pass tomorrow? Okay. Can I pass next week? Okay. Can I still pass, sir? It's already 2 weeks late? Okay. So that means that even if all or majority of the teachers in CPAC are strict, you cannot conclude that not one or not a few of them are not also strict like me. Okay? So it's a fallacy that when you meet most of the teachers most of the teachers strict, you will conclude that all are strict. That is a fallacy of divisions. Okay? So fallacy of divisions and fallacy of the other one earlier, fallacy of divisions, and the other one is fallacy of accidents are actually opposite each other but may be applied in the same manner. Then we have here the fallacy of wrong use of fame or fallacy of composition. Wrong inferring that what holds true of the individual automatically holds true of the group made up of those individuals. Okay, so ito naman the baliktad. Okay, a good example here is Pedro, the valedictorian of School A, and Juan, the valedictorian of School B. If they will be joined together, they will make a very powerful tandem. Now, you have not tested it yet. Most of the time, two intellectual persons, if they will be put together, they will compete against each other rather than become teammates. So that might distract them, disturb them, destroy them, and they might face loss in this kind of competition. Just like in tennis, Nadal and Federer paired for doubles. They are very good single players, 1-2 in the world during the time. When they paired in doubles and compete in the doubles from a not so hindi sikat na mga tennis players, they were defeated. Why? Because these two tennis players played together for a very long time already, and they know the drills of each other, they know the strengths and weaknesses of each other, compared to these two who are individually playing greatly but has no proof that they can play better in pairs. Okay, so this is what we call the fallacy of composition. That because you combine two better things, one great thing will come out. You still need to test, you still need to experience, you still need to know what is the actual effect before you can come out with the effect. Okay. Now, then the example here is quite the same. Top two nursing students, both ranking first and second in class, were paired in the duty and they are expected to surpass all other pairs because of their individual capabilities. But the sad thing happens. When they were paired, they do not like each other. They actually wanted to be followed by another. They don't want to be led by another. So both of them suffered and they become the poorest tandem in the floor. Again, let me remind you, dear students, that because there are two great persons in individual aspects that they will be grouped together, they will become very great. That is not an assurance. Okay, that is not an assurance. That is the main structure of the fallacy of composition. Again, individual capabilities does not convert to paired success right away. Okay, factors such as internal competition, differences of methodology, okay, exposure or popularity scrimmage might happen that may cause the chemistry of the two persons to rather take the downhill result than what is expected. Okay, so let us not assume. Let us test and experience if it is successful. Okay, next here is post hoc ergo fallacy. Post hoc ergo is fallacy of false cause. The meaning is mistaking a purely temporal sequence for a causal connection. This is best described as the means does not justify the ends and the ends matters the most. Now, here is a very good, what do you call this? A very good example. When Sir San Joaquin prays, God bless our class, then there is no quiz. When he prays, God bless our quiz, then there is a quiz. Thus making this the conclusive rule to determine quizzes. But what if one day, Sir San Joaquin forgot to say, God bless our quiz, and he was able to pray, God bless our class. Okay, and the students did not prepare for the quiz or escape because knowing there is no quiz. And the teacher gave the quiz. Okay? So do not judge it with the means. Judge it in the end. Another good example of this is when the teacher say, ay, ikaw ya, okay, you're not doing well now in your nursing studies, you'll become a very poor nurse in the future. Now, most of the nurses that are being treated this way are the ones who become successful in the future. There are many instances already that School of Nursing says this student may not really pass the board exam because of his failure to adhere to like this, and like that. And lo and behold, the students that they're expecting to pass did not pass, and those who they're not expecting to pass passed the board exam. Why? Because you don't justify that. You don't create conclusion to the means, to the start. You conclude only when there is already an end result. That is post hoc ergo fallacy. Now, let us go to the example in nursing. Okay. Usually, when Mom X cannot finish the chapter the next day, there will be no quiz. So we are not done with pediatric and cardiovascular disease. So quiz will not happen tomorrow. So I can be absent today or I can just rest, not study. However, the teacher ought to give the quiz that day. So you failed. Do not assume that the start, the trend will always be correct, because teachers can always have a change of mind, and that can only be known at the end of the class where the quiz is already given. Okay? This means, okay, the means happened here in a non-principled observation. It was used to create a conclusion which endangered the academic performance of the student, because the teacher actually does not make that as a trend. So there is no trend at all. This makes the mean very dangerous. If it worked, it will be used as the ends. No? So alam mo, most of us will always say, ay, ikaw ya, you senseless, useless ka na gid, salot ka lang sa lipon. In the near future, we heard so many stories that these people become more successful than those who have predicted them to become useless people in society. Okay? So unless you can see the future, do not judge the future. That is post hoc ergo fallacy. The end justify the means and not the means justifying the end. Okay. We have one more thing here. Complex questions or point leading fallacy. This is asking a question in which one asking creates a point of directing to a certain answer. That means the question, okay, was made with a forced presupposition. Another term for this is point leading fallacy. A good example is when the person asks you, who was with you when you stole something from the store? Either way you answer this question, it will be wrong, because this is really constructed to be wrong. Who was with you when you robbed the store? You will say no. So you robbed the store alone. But when you say, who was with you when you robbed the store? I was with my girlfriend. So there are the two of you who robbed the store. Now, complex questions should not be asked because the answers can be distorted or the answers can be misled. You ask the question separately. Who was with you? My girlfriend. Did you rob the store? No. At least by the time, it is really considered as correct. Okay? So that is a complex question fallacy. Now in nursing, who was with you when you planned to steal something from the nurse's laboratory? Same situation here. If you answer that question right away, yes or no, whatever it is, it will be wrong. Because when the CI asks, who was with you when you planned to steal something from the nurse's laboratory? I am alone. So you're alone in stealing. But then you say, I am with my classmates. So both of you are stealing. The best way to do this is do not mix up the two questions and ask them separately. So who was with you? My classmate. Did you steal something from the nurse's arts laboratory? No. That is more what? That is more dependable. Be careful of this, dear students, because there are some departments in our campus that when they want some students to really be proved wrong, even if there's no evidence that they are wrong, they will use this kind of complex questions to lead to what they want to expect rather than to let the truth come out. This is a fallacy of complex questions. Okay, another one here is false analogy. This is comparing two or more things wherein significant difference exists between these things. Wrong dilemma fallacy. I like this example here. We allow doctors to look up a difficult case in medical books when they are in the hospital. So when students or when nurses student nurses have difficulty in the exam, they can also look into the books. Now, come think of it. You're comparing a professional and a student, two different entities. You cannot compare them. When the nurse became a professional, they can look into the book. Or when the doctors are still students, they cannot look into the book. So do not compare two things which are not the same. Okay? Another one, the fish and the dog. You will say the dog is a better animal because it can bark. Question is, are there really instances in the world that the fish is already barked? You're comparing two different kinds of animals which has no comparative degree after all. So comparing two things which are not related, which have no reason to be compared, is actually a false analogy fallacy. Okay? And do not do that. Okay? Now, here is a good example. We are doing return demonstration with cardiovascular system and other body system. So it's expected that we should also rep them on reproductive system, or else we will be brainless in this concept. Now, you always know that other systems will not entail sexual harassment or will not entail possibility of mania. Now, you do cardiovascular, there is no involvement of sexually related activities. You do skeletal system, there are no sexually related activities. But when you do reproductive system, there is more harm than good because you'll be exposing their vagina, clitoris, penis, scrotum, which can be subject for sexual misconnotations. So in order to avoid this one, which is a greater problem if the student will have different things running in his mind, there goes the analogy that you cannot compare respiratory system from reproductive system because of the sexual connotation of this concept. So if there is no return demonstration for reproductive system, it's understandable because it has more sexual harm than good. Okay? So always remember that. Do not compare two things which are different and has no reason for comparison. Now, dear students, the question now is, why do we need to eliminate fallacies? Why do we need to remove fallacies or identify them? Number one, if we remove the fallacies, our points will become very clear. Our points will not become misleading. Our points will be very, very understandable. Number two, we will be able to prevent misleading, wrong, or shall we say baseless information. Because when fallacies are removed, all our informations will have evidences, all our information will be factual. Okay, and a good reminder for us, dear students, almost true is never true. So 99% in the study of logical fallacies, almost true is still false. See? 99% true is not true, it's still false. 1% true is not true, it's still false. Because there is only one thing that is not false, and that is 100% truth. Remember that always. That's why in the Garden of Eden, which we will tackle in the next few slides, there is truth there but not complete, and that is still wrong. Okay. Compromises. Oftentimes, because we have inability to really, what do you call this, to really comply correctly or perfectly, we do compromises. Compromises is a word that mixes good with evil for a better thing to come out. But remember always, there is still a presence of evil. So as much as possible, if possible, do not compromise and do what is wrong. That is where you can exclude or terminate fallacies. Now, another good thing, if you do not want fallacy to take place, be simple. Travel Simplicity Avenue. Now, if you do not use complex words, complex examples, complex terminology, if you just say it like a 2-year-old can understand, then fallacies can be eliminated and spotted and corrected easily. Now, as you have known, we are not having quizzes anymore. I just gave this lecture because I want you to catch up, because last time we were not able to discuss lecture number 7 because of, what do you call this? A very bad, I think we were not able to have lecture number 7 because the teachers of SACED have their strategic planning somewhere in Alegria, Murcia, Tituboy's Creek, if I'm not mistaken. So here are the words to terminate our class. The cure for a fallacious argument is a better argument, not the suppression of ideas. If we want others to believe us, do not destroy their argument, present a better one. Destroying others' argument is a proof that you do not have yourself a better argument. Remember that always. So if you focus on destroying others, that also means that you are also a damaged good. So if you want to teach others the correct way, do what is right for others to see that you are doing what is right. Okay? I hope you understand well from this quotation. Isaiah 1:18 said, "Come now, let us reason together, says the Lord. Though your sins are like scarlet, they shall be as white as snow." Okay? Though they are red like crimson, they shall become like wool. Okay? So if you are not sure, go to the right person and share your argument. Go to God and ask for interpretation. Ask for guidance. That is the best way to eliminate fallacies. So now, okay, let me share with you my take on this as we end our discussion. There is no such thing as almost right or highly right. Any percentages of it that is wrong will always be wrong. Right is only something that has the absence of wrong. That is why the first fallacy done in the Garden of Eden has the snake offering Eve something that is highly right, but at some points there is small percentage of wrong which Eve did not notice, and that is how cruel a fallacy can be. You notice in the Garden of Eden, the snake said, "You will not surely die." If the statement is "you will not die," then the serpent is right, because right there and then when Eve ate of the fruit, she did not die. But the word surely means throughout the life of Eve and her descendants, they will not die. The serpent is wrong. Because after the temptation in the Garden of Eden, okay, man's capability of living life without death was removed by God, and everyone has to die, including Eve and Adam. So that is now the first fallacy that was done in this world, the fallacy in the Garden of Eden. Okay, we have already terminated our class for today. I hope that you have understood the first part of our lecture in fallacies. The second part will be tackled this coming Tuesday. Okay, and hope to see you in class, dear students. Once again, this is Sir Noy Gonzaga, your teacher in logic and critical thinking, saying, let us always do what is right, for fallacies will never be right, even if it is 99% right. God bless everyone, and see you in our next few classes.